First up on the agenda, we're going to head into our first of two public hearings for tonight. Item 14.1, Riverstone Outline Plan Bylaw C-1411 and the Land Use Bylaw Amendment C-1260-115, and we will call this public hearing to order. I'll look for an introduction by administration.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. The City has received an application to amend the Riverstone Outline Plan in order to develop a 2.71 hectare Bearland condominium. The proposed concept for the condominium plan is a plus 55 gated community with approximately 16 semi-detached dwelling units. In order for the area to be subdivided, the transportation network, lot layout, and open space needs to be revised. Rezoning is not required for the proposed condominium development area, as the use falls within the RS Small Lot Residential District and the development regulations. In addition, the applicant is proposing to rezone the remaining undeveloped portion of the subject parcel to urban reserve in order to farm the land until it's ready for development. The proposed amendments are located within the Riverstone neighborhood. Riverstone is located east of 92nd Street and the Creekside Manufactured Home Community, surrounded by residential neighborhoods, Cobblestone to the north, Eagle Estates to the east, and Countryside North to the south. The properties to the west, adjacent to 92nd Street, are vacant and designated for future commercial and industrial development. In order to accommodate the Bearland condominium, the applicant is proposing the following changes to the Riverstone Outline Plan. Amending the transportation plan to extend 77 Avenue through to 92nd Street, revising the lot layout for the southwest corner of the plan area, and removing a small 0.31 hectare park from the southwest corner of the plan area. The park cannot be sited in its existing location due to the reconfiguration of the plan area. Technical study updates regarding transportation, sanitary, sewer, and storm have been submitted and must be approved by the City prior to subdivision. The proposed amendment removal of the 0.31 hectare park from the plan area would reduce the overall municipal reserve dedication to 9.6%. The remaining 0.4 owing would be paid as cash in lieu at the time of subdivision. Administration supports the removal of the park for several reasons. There are 2 large school sites and 4 parks within this neighborhood, with play structures available for all residents in the neighborhood. And this meets the park's master plan requirement of providing at least 1 park within walking distance of every home. 400 to 600 meters is considered walking distance. In addition, the Riverstone Outline Plan has 2 landowners. The east side of the plan with 1 landowner has provided the 2 school sites and as a result has over-dedicated municipal reserve. The city cannot require that landowner to dedicate additional MR. The west site, subject to this amendment, is under-dedicated and the area is difficult to locate a park in that meets our design standards. In addition, Woody Channel, which is designated as a public utility lot, provides additional green space in the neighborhood, and the cash in lieu would be used to provide open space amenities where they are needed in the city. The land use bylaw amendment involves rezoning 8.8 hectares to urban reserve. This will allow the landowner to farm the land until development occurs. At such time, a rezoning amendment would be required. Administration does not foresee any land use compatibility issues as a result of the proposed rezoning. The land is adjacent to the arterial road to the west, farmland to the east, and is buffered from the residential development to the north and south. In addition, the land is not currently serviced. Advertising of the public hearing included 2 ads in the Daily Herald Tribune, information posted on the city's website, a sign on the property, and letters mailed to adjacent property owners. Multiple adjacent landowners had concerns at various stages of this application, and all of their concerns were addressed by the applicant prior to coming forward to council. The proposed amendments are consistent with the Municipal Development Plan, the Southeast Area Structure Plan. Administration does not foresee any negative impacts as a result of approving these proposed amendments. For these reasons, administration recommends that council give Bylaw 1411 and Bylaw 1260-115 3 readings. For compliance with the MDP, administration also recommends council rescind Outline Plan OP 0601 to be replaced with Bylaw 1411. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Downey. I would move on to the presentation and submission portion and ask if there's anybody here to speak in favor of this public hearing or who to come forward, introduce yourselves. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hear me okay? Is that good?
Good.
Okay. Thanks for seeing us today. My name is Craig Gromlick. I'm with Bearstone Associates. My colleague here, Bruce Statry, he's also with our firm. So, sorry. So yeah, I just want to take this time to thank the council for seeing us on this matter. I'd also like to take a chance to thank Allison and Joe for helping us putting the package together. Did a lot of work and pushed some timelines for us, so we really appreciate their efforts here. Also like to thank engineering too. Some quick questions and quick responses through Christine and her group there, so that we really appreciate that. Specifically, all we're kind of doing with this outline plan amendment is proposing a little bit of a realignment of the road network. There's not much to it other than that. Through the notification process, we've also, like as Allison did present there, we did reach out, through the notification process, got some information back from the adjacent landowners, and we were able to, address any of their concerns, through adjusting our plan that was originally put forward. And again, with that, all we're really at the end there, in regards to the rezoning process, we're just requesting to be able to put the land back into, a condition where our landowner can farm it in term until such time that the development is, he's ready to proceed with development. So we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Perfect, thank you. Any comments, questions from council? Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and being willing to fill us in on what's been going on with this proposed change. I'm just curious about the objections or the concerns that you received. I heard you say that they were addressed. And so the question for me is, were they addressed by further explanation, or did you actually have to make some changes to your plan in order to meet the concerns of the neighbors?
Thank you, through the chair. We did have to make some small adjustments. There wasn't anything really major of concern there. Like I said, it was just a realignment of the road network, and in some cases, just some more discussion points, some cleanup on some map items. That really some of the stuff that were brought to our attention was maybe to be left to detailed design too. In both cases, actually, two of the adjacent landowners are also clients of ours, so we were able to discuss those and make sure their concerns are taken care of.
Sure, so everybody's happy now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I'm just curious if you could tell me a little bit about this rezoning process and the desire to turn it back to farmland. Just share with me a little bit about why the landowner wishes to do that, and how does that complement, or what's that do for the community if we allow that rezoning to happen?
I'll take it. So basically, when the subdivision development started, I think the developer had certain timelines and for his returns and the build out, and due to what's kind of happened in the last few years with the entire economy, really it's taken a lot longer. So currently he's paying taxes, a higher tax rate than what he would pay under urban reserve. So the request would be, if we're going to be 5 to 10 years before we get to this phase that we're paying the taxes on, we'd like to rezone it so that he can farm it and not pay such heavy tax burden for the time being. It's more of an interim change to the zoning. We're going to go back to this outline plan when we get to that phase, but we're not built out even close to that yet. So,
thank you.
If I can add to that, just on another note, is that with that land actually being in a state of being farmed, which is his intention, will aid in being able to keep that area a little cleaner. If so there should be less concerns with the weed aspect and that type of thing as well. And actually, if you can kind of show this on the screen, if it's possible. you can see that this is actually kind of the proposed interim zoning, I guess, where we're actually requesting this to be the urban reserve. Adjacent to it is actually already urban reserve, so it kind of matches suit there as well.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions for the delegation. I will mention to council that I forgot to give you an opportunity to ask questions for administration. So at this time, feel free if you have questions for administration, and I'll thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions for administration, I will see if there's anyone else here to speak to this submission. And now I'll ask if there's anyone here to speak in opposition. If I see no one move very quickly. All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and look for motion for business arising for the hearing. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Jackie Clayton. I would like to move that council give first reading to Bylaw C-1411, being the adoption of the Riverstone Outline Plan.
Thank you. Please vote. There's no discussion or debate on first reading. And that motion is carried.
I'd like to move that we give second reading to Bylaw C-1411.
It's an opportunity for discussion or debate from council. Seeing none, please vote. And that motion is carried. Councillor O'Toole.
I move that we have third reading of Bylaw C-1411 at this meeting.
Again, to a motion to have third reading. Please vote. That motion is carried, so now I would look for a motion for third reading, please. Councillor O'Toole.
I move to give third reading to Bylaw C-1411, being the adoption of the Riverstone Outline Plan.
Great, thank you. And that motion is also carried.
And
Councillor O'Toole, if you wanted to continue.
I will move on. I wish to move that we give first reading to Bylaw C-1260-115, being an amendment to the Land Use Bylaw.
Great. With no discussion or debate, I ask council to please vote. That motion is carried.
I move that we give second reading to Bylaw C-1260-115.
And I see I have Councillor Bressie in the queue.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I'll be voting against this, and I hope that council will join me in voting against this. And we've had this debate at length in the past, and so I won't be too long in saying why. But for me, I'm very sympathetic to the idea of undeveloped residential land. It makes sense to figure out how to give lower taxes to that because it doesn't consume as many municipal services. That being said, the MGA allows us to establish residential classes however we see fit. And if any of my colleagues would like to work with me on getting new residential class established to give tax relief, I'd be very happy to do that because the MGA very clearly makes that a prerogative. However, land use planning, I don't think is supposed to be based on taxes. It's supposed to be based on good land use planning. And I think that when we're switching things to urban reserve just for tax relief, I think we're trampling over the intention of these provisions of the MGA, and I just can't support that. I'll also point out to council that last time we talked about this, what we heard from administration is as we get more requests like this, there's a potential hole in our budget worth up to $1.3 million. And as we talk about these requests, I've never heard us have a conversation about how we're going to make up that hole in our budget. So I hope that, so while I'm sympathetic to what the landowner is trying to do here, I don't think this is the way to do it. And I think if we're going to go down this road, we need to be more proactive about how we're going to deal with the consequences. And also we should be figuring out an equitable way to treat all landowners the same, not just doing it for those who apply for rezoning. So I'm going to be voting against this, and I hope council will join me in that.
Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Jackie Clayton. I'll be supporting the motion, and much to Councillor Bressie's comments, I agree with him on that. Having said that, we don't have that mechanism in place yet. And so until we actually, as a council, take the time to put something in place to deal with that, this is how we're going to have to deal with it as one at a time. And I don't think it's fair with the market the way it is to just, we can see it as lost revenue. We can see it as maybe, we're charging for something that there's not a lot of service for. So I'm totally empathetic to the developers in this one, but I also agree with you that I think that we should be having a conversation about this so this doesn't continue to come in front of us, because there will be more coming. But at this point, I don't think that proponents have done anything wrong with what they're doing here, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions, I will call the motion on second reading. The motion is defeated. So at this time, I'm just going to look to Ms. Karbaschewski for some advice here. So then, thank you for that. So this portion of this public hearing.
May I make a point of order?
Yes, go for it.
I'm kind of looking at our deputy mayor and our legislative clerk. I'd kind of like to make a follow-up for what I think should be a committee discussion, a follow-up motion. I'm wondering if I'm allowed to do that within a public hearing, or
I think it needs to come. Okay, sure. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bressie.
Great. Well, then, like I said, I've got a concern in terms of that we're having these requests. We don't have the proper policy framework to talk about these requests. I'm worried about inequitability when we talk about our taxes in these, and I think that's important. We talk about that, and we talk about that soon. So I would move the council refer to the appropriate standing committee discussion surrounding the potential to create an undeveloped residential land property class. And my intention of that is we should be having this discussion. We should be having it soon. I'm not asking for a staff report with this. I'm not directing administration to do anything. I'm directing this to committee because I think it's a conversation we should have fast. We should give some good direction to administration if we're going to ask them to do some work. I think it's worth talking about, do we want to have this discussion?
Comments or questions to the motion? Councillor Plott.
Thank you. I appreciate the motion, and it gets to kind of what my comment was too. Until we have something in that capacity, then we have to deal with it in this way. So I look forward to that coming to a committee and having a good conversation about it, and hopefully from there. Maybe just a question for administration is, is there a kind of a timeline, or did they understand what the intent of the motion is, just so that we don't get it to committee and we're moving along with it?
Look to CAO Galante.
Could I speak to the intent of my motion a little bit more?
Sure, go for it.
Kind of my intent of this motion is, again, in the motion, I intentionally didn't direct administration to do any work to set this up, because I think that I'd like us to have a bit of a discussion before we ask them to do a bunch of work. So my hope is that we'd see this on the next committee or the committee after that. Since there's not administrative work, I'd assume it can get to a committee agenda relatively fast. And that's why I didn't ask administration to do any work yet.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Plott, does that answer your question?
It does. I'm just a little bit concerned, and unless we know what the effect or the impacts could be of what we're going to have a conversation about, I don't know where it's going to go from there. Like, if we're talking about this one piece of land, we're going to talk about any pieces of land that could be in this kind of scenario, that's going to have a pretty big impact. So, we could die by a million paper cuts here if we did it like this, but I'm not sure how many more developers are going to be coming into rezone land either. So I'm not sure what the conversation is going to be, and what the intent of what we have set out, how we get that to the next steps, I guess would be my concern, and how we're going to identify which pieces of land. Because one of the questions I'd have is you made the comment of potential lost revenue. What is it? What's our best guess of what that could be if a bunch of these come in and get rezoned? So I guess for me, I'd want to know a little bit more information about what the city sees as exposure to how many of these pieces of land that would be open for redevelopment.
Councillor Bressie.
Yeah, and two things I'd point out with that. One is the motion I made is discussions about establishing a whole tax class. And if we do establish a tax class, then it's not up to council to interpret that. We establish it, and that gets interpreted at the administrative level. My understanding is whether or not something falls into it. So if we did go down that route, it wouldn't be a political process anymore, which I think is very appropriate when it's coming to taxes. We don't want politicians deciding these people pay these taxes, these pay those. We want it to have an equitable and impartial process. And I think that a reason why I think it's good to have this conversation at the committee is, frankly, because we're a small council today. I don't know what the majority of council's will would be, and if this could be significant work we're asking administration to do, I'd hate to do that if only 3 of the 9 of us, which is all we need to carry a motion today, direct them to do work. I'd see significant work gone because 3 of the 9 of us want it, and it's not the will of the majority of council.
Thanks, Councillor Brushy. You still need 4 votes today, but regardless of that, I'm just going to chime in here for a minute. I think it's unfortunate, although I appreciate your intent, I just think it's unfortunate that this motion was defeated tonight at the expense of wanting to prevent or create something in the future. I look forward to further discussions. I do have concerns of a blanket tax class. If a developer does not want to bring this forward in a change of tax use, I don't think we should automatically put them in that use. So, I think that there's an opportunity there for further discussion because I don't want to see a loss of revenue under assumptions that there is an assumptive change of land use. So I do have some concerns for that. At this time, though, we do have a motion. There's no further comments or questions on the motion, so we'll call the motion. And that motion is carried. I will ask that somebody from council do me, so I'll call, so that public hearing is complete. We do have another one, however, it's not scheduled till 6:30 and we do have to wait until 6:30. So I would ask that one of my fellow councillors make a motion to move, Ms. Downey.
The rescind of the outline plan that was adopted by resolution hasn't been addressed.
Sorry. Right. So I'm looking for, there's still a bit more business under the other public hearing. My apologies. We need a motion from council to rescind the original Riverstone outline plan. Councillor O'Toole. Sorry,
I would move that we rescind the Riverstone outline plan resolution.
Thank you. Seeing no comments or questions on that, I will call the vote. And that motion is carried. Now I'm just going to move on because we still have about 7 minutes until the next public hearing starts. So I would ask that one of my fellow councillors make a motion to move council member reports up in the agenda. So we'll just make better use of our time while we wait for the next public hearing to start. Councillor Plott.
I'd be willing to make the motion that we would do our council member reports now.
Perfect. Thank you. Since you're on the mic, Councillor Plott, I think you told me you had one. I don't recall what it was.
Oh, sorry, I don't have any council member reports.
Okay, apologies. Councillor Bressy.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. So a bit of a Sport Connector update. I've attended 2 things to Sport Connector. One was we had another meeting with the board to talk about revenue opportunities and to talk about how do we help that organization stay afloat without asking for more funding, or if it's the will of our council or county council and with less funding. And so something that you're going to be seeing in the next little while from them is there's going to be an adult try it day coming out where adults will get to go try a bunch of different sports and go out for a meal. But that's one that it's adults, not kids. So we feel comfortable charging adults for that, especially since we're going to give them a nice meal. And so I'm excited for that. That'll be great for our community, great for the organization. There's some opportunity to ask parents if they'd like to donate at the end of Kids Try It Days that I think we're going to be seeing. I think that we're very clear on the board, we're never going to charge kids to do Try It Day. But if there's families like mine that appreciate enough to throw $20 to the organization, it's really appropriate that they have an opportunity for that. But the other conversation we're starting to have that I'd love to have with council at some point in the future is what should the Sport Connector be doing for some of its core services it's been offering? So, for example, the Sport Connector helps with bids for large games. It was very key in the Fastball Championships, for example, coming this year. And a lot of Sport Connector resources were used for that championship. and the Sport Connector got no money for that. So there's an opportunity to either charge for Sport Connector services for those, or to ask the Sport Connector gets a take of the sponsorship revenue generates, or something like that. But on the other hand, is that going against the mandate is that what we're paying them to do? And so it's kind of this catch-22 where we don't really know what our funding municipalities would like. Would they like us to generate revenue over the things we're already doing, realizing that that means that we're going to start charging for things we're not charging for right now? Or would they like us to keep offering services all for free? And that's a conversation we're going to have as we start talking about community group funding. On a more fun note, the Sport Connector also had their Awards of Excellence banquet last Friday, and it was a really great event. The tickets were sold out. We actually couldn't get everybody to sit down at the tables they wanted to sit. Actually, we had a few more people than we expected. There were 55 people nominated for not just outstanding athletes, but for sport builders, for outstanding volunteers, outstanding coaches. And something I really appreciated about that was the Sport Connector in the middle of the program took a couple minutes to recognize the work of the Regional Recreation Committee, and also to recognize the city and other partner municipalities, and really helping the crowd understand that sports are possible in our region because of the support of municipalities. So I thought that was really nice to see. So I appreciated being at that night.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much. I have the Combative Sports Commission update. We had a meeting here last week, and kind of didn't really want to do this, but I took the resignation of Darren Metzler, which has been our vice chair for over 11 years. He moved on with the company he works for to Southern BC, a place called Chilliwack. He works for Patterson Broadcasting, and he took kind of went up the ladder a little bit. He spent 11 years on the commission, and he was very well known in the combative sports throughout North America. And just wanted to let you know that he'd be very well missed, but he did leave me his phone number, so any issues or concerns that we need to deal with. But I do respect him for all of his work ethics, and the desire was to make sure the sport grew and was always safe, and that kind of stuff. We also are looking at getting the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation youth program started, and allowing it to take place. So we'll be hearing from the commission over that in the next few years, a few months. We have a number of board members that have a lot of experience in this, but we will be trying to make sure that we offer the opportunity for other promoters in the area to maybe host youth in the MMA, which is very strict in its safety. The rules change as every year goes up, so it's not something that we're going to allow kids to get beat up. It's very strictly organized, and it's worldwide. So that would be my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. Seeing no further committee reports, council member reports, and the timing is really close, so I'm going to wait about 1 minute and we'll move into our next public hearing. And I now have, you tell me when we're good, Ms. Karbaszewski. Sure, go for it, Councillor O'Toole.
I did attend the Franco-Alberta flag raising at the Francophone School here in town. I represent the Francophile network, which is an international network between Canada and the United States, and also the Alberta Bilingual Municipalities Association. And I gave words of greeting on behalf of the council members and the mayor, and it was very well attended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. I now have 6:30, so I will call the second public hearing to order. So it's the Municipal Reserve Disposal for a portion of 24R Block 2, Plan 969MC. As I mentioned, the public hearing was called to order at 6:30 tonight. I'll look for introduction from administration. Director Glavin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kleinick. It is actually going to be our Engineering Services Manager, Christine Donnelly.
I'll pass it over.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Donnelly, thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. The city's Planning and Development Department received an application to remove the municipal reserve designation from a portion of city-owned land, which is up on the screen now. This request is part of a proposal to expand on the current Decoy Armories building that's located immediately south on city land as well. And advertising for the public hearing for the removal of the reserve designation, as well as posting of a sign, everything that we needed to do in accordance with the MGA Section 606 was done. There was a circulation as well, and all comments and concerns that came in from stakeholders were addressed by the applicant. And therefore, as a result, administration is recommending council approve the removal of the portion of reserve designation of Plan 969MC Block 52 Lot 24R by resolution. And further, that council direct administration to take steps to register the removal of the reserve designation from the title on that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions for administration? I have Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I've got a couple questions. One is, I'm trying to figure out if this is our final decision point on this land or not, in terms of, it's great we're removing the designation, but I think it's still city-owned land, and I'm wondering if the applicant's lease already covers this land, or if there's going to have to be another decision before council whether or not we give them permission to actually use the land.
Ms. Donnelly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. This is just the first step to remove the designation. After that, this portion of land could then be consolidated with the adjacent parcel. And then from there, administration would be bringing it back for those next steps. But this point is just to remove the municipal reserve designation.
Councillor Bressie? Councillor O'Toole?
I was just wondering if there was any consultation with the neighborhood, including the school, of making any changes and what the changes would be.
Ms. Donnelly?
Through the chair, we followed our usual process of advertising in the paper, posting a sign. Through that process, we did not receive from the neighbors directly. I am aware that some questions have come up subsequently, but I think those might have to do with the next steps. This first step is just the disposal, the MR designation, so that we could consolidate and create a different parcel.
Thank you very much.
All right. Seeing no further comments or questions for administration, I would ask if there's any presentations or submissions. If so, please come forward in support of this application. Come on forward, Mr. Tatry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess with respect to the consultation, we did, Rotary members of our Decoy Community Hub Project Committee met with the Swan-Haven Association representatives several months ago now. The project stalled a little bit due to some paperwork issues, but we met with 3 or 4 of them, and they seemed like they were definitely in favor of the project. We also met with the principal of the Swan-Haven School, and their only concern was that currently during the day they use that for parking. That's not going to go away for them. In fact, there'll be more parking. So I think it's all been pretty positive. I know there was one concern that came around today on social media, but yeah, that's all. They were concerned about using up the parkland. I mean, we needed the extra parking because the facility will hold more people. So we took parking to the north and as little as we could land to the east, which would encroach on kind of the current playground area there. So it's not an extensive amount of land to the north, but it is chewing up a little bit of the grass area there. But the intent of the building is for youth services and to offer a lot of youth programs. So hopefully we can augment some of the loss of the playground area with some of the programs we're going to be able to offer within the building. So.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I also understand that when the project gets started, there will be some landscaping issues that need to be addressed and some drainage issues. So this will all support the project and the fields around there. So sometimes right now the water sits there for quite a long time, and this will reduce any of that laying water.
Yeah, through the chair, we did, as part of the development permit, we had to submit a revised grading plan for the area, and a desktop study was done on the loss of land and hard surfacing that we will be taking, and what effects it might have on that ponding area. It was negligible, so we're pretty confident that those will be addressed. And you're right, we obviously are going to have some storm drainage in there, and it should, I'm thinking, make things better. I hope so. I hope the firm that designed it does well.
Thank you. I see no further comments or questions, so thank you for that. I will ask if there's anyone else here to speak in support of this submission, and if none, I'll ask now if there's anyone here to speak in opposition of the submission. So if you're here, come on up, introduce yourself. Thank you for coming. Welcome. If you could just introduce yourselves. Thank you.
My name is Grant Wirt. I'm Grant Wirt. I live in the Swanhaven area. These are my two children, Ava and Christian, grades 4 and 5, who participate in the Swanhaven School District area, Major concern is taken away from the parkland to use for parking, which is, I find, unacceptable. We've got lack of green space in that area already. The building has been there for some time. I do not see any problem with renovation of the building, but extending the park for a parking lot is not good. Currently, there is 3 soccer fields or 3 soccer goals. There's a backstop for baseball. There's a tennis club with 3 tennis courts. There's a playground area and also the basketball court. If we take away from this green area, you have less than 100 meters, probably in less than 80 meters now from end to end at a very longest stretch. These children currently take their recesses over there, and they have play days and phys ed days where they learn to run, throw, and jump. You take that away, even that small amount, people think it is small. 20 meters and 100 meters is not small. It's 20% of that area. These children will not be able to do some of their activities where they currently are pushed over already to that area. They have to cross the street to do their recess and their play and phys ed days. So I oppose the extraction of the green land of that 20 meters or so part for a parking lot, which is just absurd. We do not want to lose our green space. You can build up, or you can build, Decor Armories is well known, and they're growing immensely, and they want kids in there and family programs, all for it. Accommodate the space you've been given. If you need to go bigger, look for a bigger green space, expand your knowledge, expand your facility. There's currently, I heard $1.8 million by the Rotary Club. Somewhere I came up, I heard $3 million total. That can build a really nice building somewhere. I believe Councillor Plott can attest to that. $3 million is a lot of money. And to squish in the center portion in there to take more of the green space away for parking to accommodate the building, I disagree. And these children who participate in the school, you have approximately 90 kids twice a day, 5 days a week, running up and down that field. That is their recess play area because there's not enough room on the other school grounds. And you're now taken away from that. So, and they've been there for 20 years, if not 30, I heard.
Thank you. Comments or questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you for, oh, there we go. Just a little late to the draw, that's all right. Councillor O'Toole.
Have you seen this project?
No, actually, I like to reframe how I found out. I found out by the sign that's been blown down for the last 3 weeks. I took pictures of that sign. So that sign has not been up. I have never gotten any piece of paper to my door. I've never been told I back onto the park that is actually on there. The building affected, the green space will not affect me, but it will affect my neighbor who is behind me. I'm sure he'll come up after me. So it's, I think the project's beautiful. It's a beautiful building. There is no doubt. And there's no doubt I'd love to see the armories, the cadets flourish and go forward. But if they want to get bigger, you have to go to a bigger space. You can't fit 2 football fields in one. So if we're kind of trying to accommodate the children, Swan Haven area, don't take our green space away. It's so little. Highland Park across the road has got a huge green space. Pat Gorman Park, 4.4 acres. We got City Park down by just east of the high school. It's got 7.5 acres. We have 2.2 acres, and we are accommodating backstop, 3 soccer poles, tennis court, playground area, and 3 tennis basketball court and 3 tennis courts. It's full right now. We're budging, we're blowing up at the seams there.
Thank you.
I'd just like to give you this with
Sure.
you leave. Take that, have a look at it, and if you have any questions, you can talk to me later.
I see no further comments or questions, so I thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate that. Thank you for coming tonight. I will ask now if there's, sorry, did you have something to add? No. Okay, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I will ask now if there's anyone else here tonight to speak in opposition to this public hearing. If so, come on forward and just introduce yourself. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming.
I'm Clarence Bidney, and I live right next to the Armory's parking lot. And I think it should be just left the way it is. I don't need somebody coming from a dance and puking over my back fence. And that's what's going to happen when you make it bigger and you get more dances and one thing another going on there. It's just going to go downhill, the whole area. And there's kids there. You're going to be, you make a, how big is your parking lot going to be?
Well, I don't actually have those drawings in front of me, but I mean, there's absolutely standards of what the expectation will be for parking. Maybe does administration have any comments in regards to the parking's footprint, etc., on the facility? Ms. Donnelly?
Through the chair, I do have a diagram that we could put up. However, I just want to mention today is about the municipal reserve designation. The steps required to determine parking lot and building, none of that has occurred as of yet. So this would be purely high-level conceptual plan and has not been reviewed at all. I don't think through our official processes for a building development permit or any of that.
Thank you. So as Ms. Donnelly mentioned, this is simply for one process right now. We're not approving the development permit. We're not approving the footprint on the land. Today, we're just changing the municipal reserve to allow for a disposal of this municipal reserve. So we're not going to be in discussion of, the number of parking stalls, et cetera, of what the footprint of the building looks like today.
I've never been approached by anybody with any piece of paper saying what they wanted to do. All we got was that sign up by the Armory saying that they were going ahead with this thing, and we are totally against it.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any comments or questions for the delegation this evening? Seeing none, I thank you for coming. I know Councillor O'Toole said that he would he'd be happy to meet and discuss, and he has some opportunity to show some more drawings of the project, and so possibly maybe your neighbor who has a document in his hand could have further discussions with you as well. But at this point, it's just for changing of the municipal reserve land. So thank you for coming tonight.
I'd just like to add that
Sure.
Clarence only found out from me, and I only found out by driving by it. So I don't think a lot of people know exactly what's going on in that area.
Okay.
So for the 2 to 3 people that were contacted, I don't think they can speak for Swanhaven completely.
Right. Thank you for coming tonight. I will just ask one more time if there's anyone else here to speak in opposition of this public hearing. All right, so we will move on to, I'm going to close the public hearing now. The public hearing closed at 6:46, and I will look for to council for business arising from the public hearing. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you. I'm actually wondering if I could ask a question for administration before we get to
Sure.
questions. That is just another question about, earlier I asked about the second decision point council will have to decide, do we actually dispose of this land and let the group take it? I'm just curious, administration, can you tell me a little bit about what the circulation usually looks like for the neighborhood in terms of how do we notify the public when we're having that conversation about whether or not to let a group use more city land?
Ms. Donnelly? Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Clayton. When we enter into an agreement on city land that extends beyond 5 years in duration, it must be approved by council. And I would suggest it's likely in this case we'd be seeking an agreement beyond 5 years in order to give Decoy Armories some surety of their use and right to be on the land. So that would be a decision point for sure. There as well, there is a development permit process that would be that would happen in this, where I believe adjacents would be circulated. I'm getting a head shake. No, I apologize. Perhaps we could get some clarity from the planning and development manager on that process.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Clayton. In the case of a permitted use where the proposed development meets all the land use bylaw requirements, there will be no adjacent notification.
Councillor Bressie, did you have something further?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think where I'm going to go with this tonight, and I'm concerned when I hear neighbors say that they didn't know that this was going to happen. I've heard about that. That gives me pause tonight. I'm wondering if I'm likely to be supporting the removal of this designation, but I also want to make sure that we're giving neighbors, if council does move ahead with this, I want to make sure we're giving adjacent landowners a fair chance to have a say. So I'm wondering if there'd be any issues or challenges if I made a motion later tonight, something like direct administration to circulate adjacent landowners prior to council considering agreement, or if there's a motion like that I can make that would be doable in our processes to make sure these landowners do hear properly.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. I'm just going to, CAO Galante had something to share as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I would suggest that because that particular change is significant in terms of our typical notification process, I would suggest that could be a motion for administration to review the system. However, I wouldn't recommend this for a particular project like in this opportunity. This is a more systemic change if we want to do door-to-door notification or determine a catchment area, deviating from our typical posting on-site of signage and notification via paper and our typical channels.
I have Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Deputy Chair Clayton. I'm kind of with Councillor Bressie on this. I'm having a hard time I hate hearing that we've got 2 members of the community that are saying they didn't have circulation on this, and it's a pretty big project. I guess question for administration, if this wasn't approved tonight to do the approval of the removal of conditional portions, how would that affect this project? I guess I don't know what the timelines are on the project itself.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Clayton. Administration has been working with the applicant in reviewing and processing the development permit, and for all intents and purposes, it's ready to go. So if this did not go through, then there would be no way we would be able to issue a final approval on that. Just thinking aloud, I'm not sure if, I mean, we always maintain the option to refer development matters of any nature to committee for review and approval. That may be an option to address some of the concerns being discussed. And although not required in the land use bylaw for adjacent notification, if council felt that adjacent notification was what they would like to see, I don't see any problem with us doing that, despite the fact that it is a permitted use with that meets all requirements of the land use bylaw. Okay.
Councillor Platt, sorry.
Sorry, just one other question for administration too. Just, I believe Mr. Word had kind of talked about, losing the MR was something that wasn't something he was hoping for. I'm just wondering if there was any calculations done in that area, what the MR would look like if this was taken out, if we'd still be sitting in that 10% range, or where we'd be in the Swanhaven area, and if there's any agreements with the school that they're using this site, or if it's just more of a good neighbor thing that they happen to be using this site as a school, or is there anything there that Swanhaven's actually dedicated to use this land as part of their operations?
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Clayton. My understanding is that there is no formal arrangement for the Swanhaven School to be using the land or the municipal reserve in this area. And
would there be? I'm not sure how this normally works, Mr. Johnson. On this, would you look at an area like that and make sure there's still 10% MR left within it, or is it hard to start picking a boundary and trying to figure out MR space and dedication?
Thank you, Chair Clayton. You hit it on the head there. It is hard to pick a boundary, because if you put the boundary on the other side of Muskosipi Park, then the neighborhood is very well provided with green space. But if you drew the line at the twisties, then there really aren't that many parks within the neighborhood bound by roadways.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I guess I'm looking for some clarification. I'm not sure if I missed this point, but I thought I heard you express it earlier, that what we're looking at right now is the disposal of the municipal reserve, but before anything else were to happen on that piece of land, there would be further processes that would involve notification of neighbors.
So administration can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a permitted use, therefore there won't be further notification. Right now, though, the discussion for tonight in the public hearing is just based on rescinding the municipal reserve notion to this piece of land. The development permit with this project will continue. It is a permitted use, so there won't be additional consultation on this or notification to surrounding adjacent neighbors.
Thank you for that.
So, Mr. Johnson, I see you're in the queue, but it might be old. I'm just going to double check. It's just on my screen, so it could be, okay. Perfect. So I don't see anyone else here. I'll just ask one more time. Is there anybody here last time to speak in opposition to the rescinding of this disposing of this municipal reserve? I already closed? Okay, my apologies. So we are looking for business arising from this hearing, and therefore I'd look to council for a motion. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Clayton. I move the council approve the removal of a portion of reserve designation from Plan 969 MC Block 52, Lot 24R by resolution.
Thank you, and that motion is in order. Comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. Yeah, I'm going to be voting in favor today, and I'm likely to ultimately support the project. I do think that it's a project that I definitely get the concern with losing green space, but at the same time, I think it is a project that is good for the community, and it's much needed. That being said, what really does give me pause is neighbors saying, we hardly even heard about this, and we're worried our neighbors might not. So I don't know if I'm going to go anywhere with the motion later tonight, but I do just want to say that even though I'm supporting this tonight, before I support the next decision point, I'm going to need to be convinced by administration of the applicant that all the neighbors have had a good chance to know what's going on and have a say before I support further actions in the future.
Councillor Palat.
I'm just going to say ditto to what Councillor Bressie said there. I feel the same way. I think this is something that the area should have a little bit more. I can appreciate that it's maybe a permitted use, but I think when you're doing this big of a scale change, especially with taking MR out, I think the neighborhood should be consulted with a little bit more.
Councillor O'Toole. Sorry, I just asked before I'll go to you to close, Councillor O'Toole, just ask if there's anyone else that would like to speak to the motion. Go ahead, Councillor O'Toole.
So what I understand was the neighborhood association was really on board with this whole project right from start. There was never really any concerns. There was questions asked, but they had a complete buy-in. And I think if you're part of the neighborhood association in that area, that you would know that. I'm not saying that they didn't get addressed, but I'm just letting you know that the people at the neighborhood association were very on board and looking forward to the interesting change that's going to take place over the next few years.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole. I will call the motion now. And the motion is carried. There is one subsequent motion I could ask maybe Councillor O'Toole. There you have it in your notes. Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
I move that council direct administration to take the steps to register the removal of the reserve designation from the title of Plan 969 MC, Block 52, Lot 24R.
Thank you. Seeing no comments or questions on the motion, I'll call the motion. Please vote. And the motion is carried. So that will take care of our second public hearing for tonight. There was no scheduled delegation business. We've done our council member reports, so I will go with roundtable. And if it's all right with you, Councillor Blackburn, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do have nothing to report as I'm not yet fully involved in any of the community activities or even on the standing committees at this.
Not a problem. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just if you
no, that's
anything
what
to add. So, Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to highlight one event that I went to. It was the Women of Influence Awards 2020 over at the Teresa Sargent Hall. There were 3 different awards handed out. There was the first award was the Young Women of Influence, which went to Erica Fisher, which we're all probably familiar with. Another one went to Trailblazing Woman of Influence, which was Holly Sorgan, which is probably another one we're all fairly familiar with here. And the Distinguished Woman of Influence went to Kari Speaker Smith. It was a good event. I will say I was in a spot speaking with a few city employees, and it was nice to get my head around the Montreal's Cultural Centre upgrade that we're about to undertake and putting in a wall and some soundproofing. It was actually quite hard to hear in the event where we were sitting. So made me kind of pause on whether we should be having those kind of events moving forward in the Montreal's Cultural Centre, because I felt really bad for the speakers because we couldn't almost hear anything they said. So having said that, 3 great women won awards, so I was happy to be part of it.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Bressie.
Sorry, I just realized I pressed the wrong button on my microphone. First, I think it's worth council being aware of the supervised consumption site report, which came out last week from the province and was very critical of supervised consumption sites across the province. And I think it's very well, I think council should know about some of the deficits of that report. And there's going to be I think that the Opioid Response Task Force is going to be doing some formal work to point out some of the fallacies we see in it. But some of the issues with it is, one, it talks about a lot of deaths and negative consequences that happen within the distance of a supervised consumption site. The distance they're using is 500 meters, which I'd point out the hospital is within 500 meters of the supervised consumption site. So presumably, the methodology isn't well documented, but presumably anybody that dies in our ER might be counted that number. They also looked at not just 500 meters, but also 2 kilometers, which goes out past Prairie Mall. So really, it's It's a study that's attributing any opioid death or any death due to alcohol or any kind of issues that happen anywhere in the city to our one supervised consumption site. A few other issues with it is it talks about the report contemplates the idea that giving oxygen to somebody who's dealing with an overdose doesn't count as overdose reversal. How our supervised consumption site works is they've got a series of medical directives that were signed off by a medical doctor telling them how they treat patients. And one of those is the doctor gives them an algorithm that's based on their blood pressure, based on their pulse rate, based on a variety of things. This medical algorithm says somebody showing these signs, they're at risk of death or serious brain damage. Give them oxygen. And that's something that a doctor has said is vital for these people. And the report would say, well, that doesn't actually count as intervening, which our supervised consumption sites doctor would say is different. Two other things worth council being aware of is it paints a rather unflattering picture of the Grande Prairie supervised consumption sites in terms of the money spent, but the money that shows up in the report is the supervised consumption site's budgeted amount. The supervised consumption site is spending roughly 60% of what it budgeted. The panel was made well aware of that by the supervised consumption site by Northreach, but the panel didn't reflect that in their final report. So the financial side of this for the Grande Prairie site is off kilter. And the final thing for council to be aware of is, as you all well know, the supervised consumption site opened up about 3 weeks after the St. Lawrence Center was shut down. And as we know, the St. Lawrence Center created the loss of that created a lot of social disorder in our community. And the report makes absolutely no effort to separate out what are the consequences of St. Lawrence Center and what are the consequences of this supervised consumption site. So unfortunately, my personal opinion is that it's a completely useless report for us as we're making local decisions. And I'd encourage council to read it and draw your own conclusions. But also, if you're hearing about it in the community, I think it's really worth knowing that there seem to be some very big apparent deficits in this report. That's one thing I wanted to highlight. The other thing, and on kind of a funner note, I had a really fun letter delivered to me about a week ago, and I promised that I would share it with council. And it was by Lucy and Caleb, who said they were going to watch. So hi, Lucy. Hi, Caleb. And how it goes is it goes, Dear Councillor Bressie, yesterday we were playing outside and we got an idea for Grande Prairie we were hoping you will take into consideration. Our idea is to shovel all the snow in Grande Prairie and put it in one big pile except for the snow and other people's property. They can contribute by donating bags, and in return, the city gives 50 cents. To visit the snow pile, to play at the snow tower, it costs $5 per person. We know we are only 10, and so, as we said before, we hope that you'll take it into consideration. We thought of some awesome names, and then they came up with some really great names for it, and then it says, Sincerely, Caleb and Lucy. And it was a cool letter to get in terms of, I love seeing these kids being creative about how can we make our community better. And I'd point out that, Councillor O'Toole, you've talked a lot about your recent trip and some ideas you've had for winter festivities. Well, maybe something like this could be a great one for that. Or Councillor Clayton, I know you've talked about community pride and getting more people involved in our community. And while there's two prideful residents who are also talking about ways for people to help contribute from their property to the city. And Councillor Palat, I know you love talking about revenue generation. And I love how they recognize that maybe this shouldn't just be borne by taxpayers and volunteers, but people should pay something for the service they access. And so I thought it was a letter in terms of, is a specific idea doable? I don't know, but it's really great to hear that according to these grade 10s, at least some of the general directions, or sorry, these 10-year-olds, some of the general directions we're going seem to resonate with them. So I'd share that with you guys.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. Councillor O'Toole.
Let it be known that I'll donate the snow that's in my yard. I just want to bring up one item that we did many of them this week and last week, but we did have a meeting with K-Division, RCMP, where normally we meet them once a year for about 15 minutes, and we requested last time that we spend a little bit more than 15 minutes, so they actually come to Grande Prairie with a crew of people, and we get to talk to them for about 2 hours. So that was, and we expressed some concerns, and they listened to us very well and gave us positive feedback. So with that, I'll move on.
Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Clayton Jackie, Deputy Mayor. I think there's some been said, but couple is left. I did went with the downtown breakfast AGM thing in the morning. That was quite a few people show up, and it was good thing to learn for me because I'm not involved in downtown before, so I learned some stuff there. It was a very good thing. And then we went to the college, the president and CEO, the new president, Robert Murray, and his to be celebrate for him to be starting up the new leader for our community in the college. And it was good, positive, and his enthusiasm to bring the college to the next level. It was a great speech, and lots of people show up there. It was a very great fundamental thing. And then we set up a lunch, the Minhas group set up the lunch with the residential doctors in Grande Prairie and Northern Alberta to recruit. There are 22 doctors shows up. It was in the hospital set up lunch thing. And it was a very good event, and the young doctors, which they're going to be doctor in a year or two, they were practicum around this area. And they're interested to come to the north, but the interesting thing was in their mind, our government, provincial government, to cut backs for the healthcare and the doctors and their fees, whatever they charge in. That was their big issue. It was eye-opening for us too, because they said, you guys doing a very good job, but the government's doing the other way around thing to bring the doctor into the north. So that also was a good learning point for myself being there. And then the last thing we did, me and my colleague, that O'Toole and the mayor, we went to the Ethiopian restaurant opening ceremony in downtown. That was great. Food and everything was fine. It was good opening ceremony. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minaz. Pretty much everything I attended has already been mentioned. I will just mention that I had the opportunity to attend the provincial budget session last week, I guess it was, in Edmonton. It was nice to catch up with some some provincial municipal colleagues, as well as some MLAs. As you know, we're still seeing the repercussions and what that looks like going forward, but it was a great opportunity to see some familiar faces and catch up. So other than that, I have nothing else, and I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.